I live here now.
I live here now. I live in my car now, which is where I'm recording this podcast from.
And I'm in my room recording this podcast. And today we're talking about Fargo, Season 5, Episode 3, The Paradox of Intermediate Transactions. I live here now. Da-dum-bum. All right. Yeah, obviously, spoilers, as always. We didn't say that last time, but I don't really care. You should know. It's a 20-minute discussion, you know? All right, let's talk about the craziest part of Episode 3. We're just going to jump into it, jump around a bit, give our thoughts for about 20 minutes, and that's all for today. But, Daniel, last week you said, do you think there's going to be anything magical? And I think both of us were like, no, it's just going to be like very subtle, God-related, which I think this is very much so. But yeah, Old Munch, which is a very proper name for him because he is over 500 years old, is what we've learned in this episode. I like this. I think this is really weird and cool, and I don't think it's going to play a big role. I saw some people online being like, this like totally breaks the Fargo universe and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, no, it doesn't. Like, this is just fun. It's very stupid. I use stupid like very loosely. Like, I think it's a lot of fun that we have a character who is over 500 years old, because I did some research on this. It's like a sin eater thing. If you like eat the sins of someone, like as they die, like they'll go to heaven, I guess, something like that. And then I guess he's just immortal after that. But out of all the characters who could be immortal this season, I definitely thought Old Munch was a good one to choose, Noah Hawley.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting to sort of start it in the framework of like some people thinking that this like throws off the whole Fargo universe thing, because obviously there's been magical realism and supernatural elements in all of the seasons. I mean, there were UFOs, and in season 4, there was a zombie man and like Devil Watch and stuff. So obviously this is not new to the Fargo universe. I think what's interesting though is season 4 is where Noah Hawley, I think, kind of took the restraints off and really let himself cook in that sort of department. Because in season 3, VM Varga is literally the devil on Earth. He is just pure evil incarnate, and he just is consuming the entire season, and like that's evidenced by like him just eating ice cream and then puking it up, and he's just this absolutely vile character, and he is evil incarnate. This season though, now that we're, you have season 4 and there's like a literal zombie man, and then this season I feel like Noah Hawley again is like, well, I don't necessarily need to have the restraints. Like, this is sort of a VM Varga, Anton Chigurh, Billy Bob Thornton sort of amalgamation. And if he's 500 years old, then like that's cool, because it's going to have like this greater thematic purpose to it that's going to be revealed over time. And I think that the idea of the sin eating thing, like Noah Hawley gave an interview. That's right, I did my research.
I did too.
He gave an interview and he was just talking about how like with that character of Munch, he wanted to explore like how the wealthy impose stuff onto the poor, how they impose morality, how they make them feel like their being poor is their fault. And so, and again, obviously just the idea of debt, which is central to the John Hamm character. It's central to the Munch character. It's kind of central to the Fargo, universe at large, because that's the thing that comes back and forth.
I mean, think about like Lester and Lauren Malvo in the first season. I was rewatching a bunch of those scenes and I was like, wow, this is such a good dynamic between those two characters.
Yeah, and I think that what I think is going to be interesting to see going forward, not to jump ahead of recapping everything else and start talking about going forward, but what I'm interested in is, because like right now the pace of the magical realism, the supernatural, is like ramping up exponentially to a point where I almost don't think that Munch can be around for the entire season, because it seems like it's ramping up in a very dramatic way, like early in the season, and like it sets up for him going into the house at the end of this episode, and it feels almost like we're being set up for a little rug pull, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see that. And yeah, we'll just keep talking about Munch at this point. But yeah, by the end of the episode, he has this whole ritual where he covers himself in mud, a dirty mud man, and he walks into John Hamm's house. John Hamm, not there. John Hamm's new wife is there, and they kept doing this interesting thing. And I'd be very interested to see if this episode and next episode were kind of like, at one point, the beginning of next episode was at the end of this episode, because it was really ramping up at the end, and it just kind of ends. And it makes me super excited about, when we're recording this, tonight's episode. But, yeah, it's like Munch is going into this house, and it kept cross-cutting between Dot, Roy, John Hamm's new wife, and I'm like, Munch is gonna like kill someone here or something like that. And we talked about this off mic a bit. I was nervous that Munch was gonna have the power to kill someone without even like being in their presence. Like he could just like think about someone and kill them with his mind, which I think might have been too much for the Fargo universe. And just in general, it's just like when you have an all-powerful character like that. But he goes into the Tillman household, and the episode ends. And it seems like it's going to ramp up to a very exciting start to episode 4.
Yeah, and you know, in mentioning Roy's wife and like everything that's happening with Roy in this episode, there's a lot of like small things that we don't have to necessarily discuss in great detail, but there's a lot of like world building around his life that I found quite interesting. There's a cutaway to like a article headline about the race for his position of sheriff, like heating up between him and someone else, which kind of adds a little bit of stakes to like everything that's going on with him. There's also the, like, I think it's his father-in-law character who's like an insurrectionist, and he's like, we got to get munitions in like 1777 and like all of this stuff. Like, so there's like a great deal of world building going on around that. And also, you know, I guess in keeping with the supernatural theme, there's the scene where Roy's wife comes into the bedroom and immediately goes to like their little like kinky sex box or whatever, and he just like shushes her off, and she turns away, like very clearly just like a battered, abused wife. And all the while he's just staring at the ceiling, and like you said to me off mic, something that I thought was quite funny but also kind of interesting, if you want to lay that out.
Yeah, I was like, does Roy have like The Shining or something like that? Like it had like very much like Shining vibes. I was thinking like obviously Kingpin and Daredevil season 3, I think, or maybe it was season 1. I haven't watched that show in a while. I mean, he just like looking at a white wall just reminds me of Vincent D'Onofrio's character there. And, you know, he's staring at the white wall, and then all of a sudden, you know, we as the audience sees this cross cut to Dot, but it also seems like maybe Roy sees that too, because he says like, I see you. And again, this could be like, you know, some clever editing. And if this happens before the old Munch stuff, so I was like, oh, this is the magical thing this season. And then it, you know, cut to I live here now, and then it goes 500 years earlier, and I'm like, okay, maybe it's not that. But yeah, I
real
thought
quick,
that was
just
like
on that cut, like that was the most like roller coaster feeling I've ever had, like in quite a while,
yeah.
Where he just is sitting there, says I live here now, and then it says 500 years earlier. I jumped out of my seat.
Yeah, my jaw dropped. I was like, what? Where are we going? What are we doing? This is awesome. And I love when, we always talk about this too, I love when media does that to me, where it's just like something you truly never expected to happen happens. And it makes the story more interesting, I think. But yeah, I you know, maybe Roy has The Shining, or maybe they're just like always kind of thinking about each other. You know what I mean? It could also be that. But I guess we'll wait and see. And knowing Noah Hawley, I think it could also just be a thing that's not really explained. Because in the first episode, Dot was like having dreams that are like very vivid. But it also, you know, with how old Gator is in those scenes too, it's like, it wasn't like they casted like a 10-year-old Gator or something like that. Or like a 19-year-old Gator. It's like they just had Joe Keery play him again. So I sort of think like maybe they do have a connection, you know, with each other, and it's this kind of sort of shining thing, but also maybe just like maybe they just constantly think of each other and see each other in their like in these visions.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a power there, and it's, you know, Roy has this power over her, so she's always looking over her shoulder and imagining like the lion like in the brush, you know, always looking to see the eyes peeking out. And for Roy, it's just this like level of authority and possession that he has over her, and that he feels is owed to him, and so that like hyperfixation is clear in that scene, because like his now wife comes into the scene basically being like, just, you could do whatever you want to me, because that's the bond that we have in this awful marriage, and he is just completely fixated. So whether it's like an actual supernatural thing or just like the overall sort of feeling of what that level of toxicity creates, it's interesting nonetheless, and it is interesting just in terms of the editing.
Yeah, you know? Yeah, and you know, that's, as we discuss, Fargo for us for, I guess, over 10 years now, right? It started in 2013. Yeah, so yeah, as we discuss this, and like, you know, I was rewatching some stuff from season 1 last night before I went to bed, and it is just really kind of amazing to see how far the editing has come, and how far the production value has come. Because like that elevator scene, one of the best scenes in Fargo, it kind of looks kind of bad. Like, honestly, like it's pretty bright. I think all of Fargo season 1 is pretty bright. It's a little too bright, but like, especially with the last, I guess the last 4 seasons have been super stylized. Like season 2 was obviously super stylized, but like I was watching some stuff from 4 and 5, and it's like, it's just like kind of on a whole nother level. Not to say that anything is bad in the other seasons, but like the production value as series go along is like really impressive. I mean, just like look at It's Always Sunny and stuff like that. And then, you know, you have shows like The Walking Dead that just look horrible as it goes on. But yeah, let's keep moving on. We can talk about some of like the Dot and Wayne stuff this episode. They go to a gun store, which I find very funny, and Wayne is like very like, they're just on opposite pages on everything, where it's like, he's like, do you want something like big or small? And then like, or what was it? It was like, do you want something like easy to like access, or like a lot of firepower? And then like Wayne's like, easy to access, and then like that's like heavy firepower. And it was just funny to see those two like just on complete opposites, and you know, very much Ed and Peggy vibes with those two in that store.
Yeah, yeah, that scene is really funny too. Just the way that it starts with like the eye patch comment, and that's the one thing that isn't costume on that gentleman selling guns. I thought the element of the background check was interesting. It was honestly like fairly subtle. Like I was expecting them to do like this big monologue, because you know there's a scene later in the episode with Jennifer Jason Leigh where she just monologues about like what the police are, and like and you know, Holly's no stranger to a monologue that's on the nose, but that being a function within like the plot is interesting to me. You know, that they have to wait those 7 days to get those guns. In the meantime, you're just stuck with your booby traps, your Home Alone booby traps, and your pepper spray and all that. And yeah, with Wayne and Dot, I'm starting to feel some of the warmth that Dot maybe has for him, even though maybe it's not the man that she had always imagined being with. I do feel like there is a warmth there, and like I think that the performance of the actor who is playing Wayne is just very, very endearing, because he's just so soft and so sweet, and I'm a real sucker for that type of character in movies and television, who is just, you know, just a 9-to-5er, just goes to work, comes home, doesn't have big aspirations or goals or dreams, just kind of is living, and like doesn't know that there's like this whole other world out there. And so it's going to make it extra sad when like his world collapses, because he really loves her, and I think he will do anything, and that's clear when he's, you know, the bill is going to be like $5,000 or whatever, and he's just ponies it up like immediately. Like he'll do anything for her.
Yeah, exactly. And he even would change his Halloween costume with all of them real fast, because they were gonna go as something else before, but then now they're zombie killers, and he's gonna be a zombie.
And that's pretty symbolic in and of itself too. That even though it's just costumes, like he will be the zombie that will take the brunt force of like these two. They're
Yeah,
and
exactly. I mean, nothing's by accident.
No,
right? Nothing is by accident in like a Fargo
down
series.
to like in the last episode and this episode, the references between the music and the costuming to Nightmare Before Christmas, which just like rock on, dude. Like, let's go. Like when that dropped in the previous episode, I was just out of my mind excited. And then in this episode too, with the Jack Skellington mask and the I guess what was it? The Oogie Boogie Man was the other one.
Yeah. Or just the Boogeyman. Just a great ending to the episode too, with Gator and Co in the van. And again, they're gonna definitely have a rude awakening when they go into that house. But yeah, I was like excited to see it that episode, and then it just ended, and I was like, oh, dang it.
Also with that, because this goes back to my sort of thought about Munch not being long for this series, because you have the episode ending with two separate break-ins, and they can't both go the same way. At least you would imagine within television writing. So like one of these is going to go well, and one of these is going to go poor, to be broadest, So, based on the intelligence of the Joe Keery character Gator and the goons that he has hired for this job, which John Hamm mentioned, like, make sure it's only our best guys, and like as soon as we see them in the back of the van, they're like fucking with each other. But so yeah, I think it was smart to cut the episode here. It does feel like this is a two-parter, and like if they played back to back, it would be great. But it feels like they were shot together probably. But yeah, we're in for some. There's going to be one of those two situations is not going to go the way that we anticipate it. Whether that means Dot actually gets captured in this episode and brought back to Roy, very possible, and then Munch kills, Roy's wife or whatever that means, or the inverse: Munch gets killed and Dot gets away again. But it's a good ending place for this episode, because it does in just the way that linear television always has, like, gives you a great little cliffhanger, gets you excited for the next week. You get to do the water cooler talk about it all week and theorize just like we're doing.
Yeah, exactly. Some other things I guess I want to touch on real fast. In that last sequence, there's a scene where Dot answers the phone, and John Hamm and Roy, I should say, is in a church, and he calls Dot, and he calls her Nadine, which is I assume her name before Dorothy Lyon. And it's, he only says one line to her, but I think it makes me so excited for when they have a scene together. It was like really, it felt haunting, and like she just like hangs up the phone, and she's like not freaked out about it. She's just like kind of prepared, and she's like in her zombie killer outfit. So it's like, that's also great. Like she's ready for a fight. And again, like I think it really like sums up like both characters in a good way, because John Hamm's like, again, this man of God, I guess, like in this church, and he's just like, again, calling his ex-wife, you know what I mean? Like he's just like a man of God, but like not really, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, he's completely bastardized, religion and turned it into his own little thing. I love that scene, especially because like, we talked about this before, but we don't know to what extent they're going to interact in this series, because they're on opposite ends of the world. Not literally, but in terms of like where their characters are at. So having just that little moment, and the way you can see the power that he still has over her just in this one call, but also like it's a very specific choice to call her and sing in a very creepy way to her, and to use her name,
yes.
In a way, sort of a dead naming act, and like that,
mm-hmm. And just being like, I know where you live.
Exactly. Just that in and of itself Also, I don't know if that was the greatest move by Roy when has his boys going to go get her, but you know, you do you, guy.
Yeah, and I'm very interested to see like if, you know, Dot does get captured by Roy. It's like, what's his end game here? Like, what's the point, you know? And I think that'll be an interesting thing down the road too. Anything else on this scene?
Well, just with what you're saying there, like what is his end game? Because, you know, there's a debt that like has gone on so long that it cannot be repaid, you know, monetarily. It's an open question of what, and the same thing goes for Munch. It's like what can absolve this debt, you know? Seemingly nothing. So what exactly does he want out of this? Is he just going to cage her up and keep her as his little trophy, or is he going to want to kill her? Like, and it's unclear at this moment, but that also creates just a greater sense of threat.
Yeah, and some nice tension too. All right, I think just the last thing we have to talk about before we go, Whit Farr, played by Lamorne Morris. Fun scene in the police station. He's clearly going to play a big role this season. Arguably like the main police character. Him or Olmsted, I guess. Maybe two of them combined. But he goes to the police station with his crutches. He sees Gator steal evidence, and you know. Usually during this scene, it's like, or these scenes in like Fargo, it's like a smooth character like Mike Milligan or like, you know, Lorne Malvo being like asking a riddle or something like that, like, you know, or VM Varga, you know, like these really cunning characters. And then Gator is just like not that whatsoever. And it's just really funny that he just, I love this scene so much because this is like the perfect Fargo. Like, it's very serious, but it's also very funny and kind of dry. But Whit is like, what'd you just take there? And he goes, Gator's like, I didn't take what? What are you talking about? I didn't take anything. He's just like trying to gaslight him, but without anything else. He's just being like, that didn't happen at all. And there's nothing else I'm going to say about it. And then at the end, he gets into like, you know, this story about when he was on crutches, and then like it was like a black kid who did that to him, and it's like, you don't want to see what I like did to him. And he was basically like, you know, he's basically threatening an officer. And yeah, I don't know, it was really cool. I just want to say this because I think Joe Keery's a great actor, but I feel like he doesn't get to do stuff like this very often. He's like zany computer guy or like cool guy, but he doesn't actually like ever play like an asshole. Like, he's an asshole with a heart of gold in Stranger Things, but in this it was like really nice to be like, oh, this character is like despicable and I hate this character, and I can't wait to see what old Munch does to him.
Yeah, just on the Keery thing, I think that Fargo's always been a place for actors to go and like, you know, flex in different ways, and it's something that's always been important to me with actors is where their sense of vanity like lies, you know, where their interests lie. Because like an actor like Jacob Elordi, for example, like when he's in the Kissing Booth movies, it's like, okay, this is just, you know, another one of those types of actors who's gonna just do teen heartthrob movies and like is just gonna cash checks, work with Netflix for a million years. But like, he's really endeared himself to me in the choices that he's made, you know, across the last like 3-4 years of stuff that he's been doing. He's tried to evolve out of a particular image that he and the creators of the things that he was in shaped. And Joe Keery, in the same sense, it's like, yeah, I don't think I've seen him have an opportunity to play a character like this. And also, to play a character like this is, you know, a risk, because yeah, that sounded like a racially, you know, motivated threat against Lamorne Morris. And also like the set deck in his room is insane. It's like American flag, like all just a bunch of women like in bikinis, and like he's just like this absolute loser incel dork who just is like screaming like, I'm a winner, and like doing like Jordan Peterson affirmations in the morning. So like, this is not a guy that like he would want to be identified as, but he's a guy that he would want to play as an actor, which, you know, is cool. And then just to the overall point of like the Lamorne Morris character in that scene, and the usage of the varying elements of police enforcement, he is like so helpless right now, and he can't do anything. And then similarly, Olmsted, when she goes and talks with Jennifer Jason Leigh's character, she's also pretty helpless. Like, everybody is kind of between those two scenes. Like, there's the thin blue line where you can't like step over and like do anything to another officer, and then there's the element of like you can't do anything to the wealthy. And Jennifer Jason Leigh lectures her about like, why are you guys aren't important, because your job is just to keep us from the poor. It was a little on the nose and I didn't love it, but like the sentiment of that is interesting. So
yeah, also I'm like, why is Jennifer yeah, that character I think has been a little all over the place so far.
Yeah, a little bit, but the overall sentiment of like what can and can't the police do, like what is their function in society, I think with everything that's been happening within the conversation around policing in America, it would be surprising to me if the show doesn't reach a place where there is I don't know, at least a more firm statement on that.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I like Roy and Gator so much this season, because I think, you know, post 2020, this is like the first Fargo season that takes place in the modern day. Because, you know, like we had the 40s one or the 50s one in season 4, but it's like, that's like old cops, you know, like, but even then it's like, I think Noah Hawley's been doing a great job of like balancing his police enforcement characters where they're not, again, like in season 1, the main characters are police. But since then, I feel like the side characters more or less are like police officers. And like, again, some are good, some are bad, especially this season. I think they're doing a nice balance of like a good and bad, you know, pun intended, I guess, a good and bad cop. But yeah, no, it's like in this modern age, it's very important to have like an interesting, at the very least, an interesting take on law enforcement. And I think Noah Hawley has been doing that this season so far.
Definitely agreed. It's a balance, and it would be inaccurate to depict all of the police officers as like racially motivated bad guys that kill unsuspecting minorities in the street. And it would also be unfair to make them all the hero of the story. So I agree. I think it's good that you have the balance and ultimately that it always comes from a character perspective. It's not, you know, he has these big ideas, and I think that's what sort of where season 4 went a little wrong, is sometimes the metaphor took over in place of character. But in this season, it's very character driven. It's very methodically paced, and you get to live with these people and understand these people, and that's the best, you know, conduit for engaging in these types of stories.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's a good note to end on. Do you think anyone's going to trip and shoot themselves in the face next episode? I rewatched that scene last night. So funny. It's so stupid. It's so good.
I don't think anyone's going to shoot themselves in the face, but I wouldn't be surprised if something anticlimactic happened to Munch. I wouldn't be too surprised.
Yeah. I think we're on the same page there, because it's kind of like I think they've written themselves so into a huge corner with Munch right now, and I'm happy about it, because it's like, oh, it's only episode 4, like, and we're like here already. Like we said last week, I was very happy with this episode that it didn't like mess around, didn't beat around the bush. It just like has been going in, and again, excited for the next 7 episodes. Yeah, anything else, Dan?
No, I mean, that's pretty much it for me. I think I love the supernatural element of this episode. However, I am reserving judgment and criticism for later, because I want to see how it plays out before I become critical of like, okay, this is a little bit too far, or this is too surreal. So right now, as of this conversation, love it, really interested in it, excited to see where it goes. Will that opinion change later down the road? Possibly, because that's sort of how season 4 went. But as of right now, I'm having a really good time. It's still one of my absolute favorite TV shows, and still one of the most fun shows to talk about.